Well, here we go again with one of my very favorite pastimes, which is, as you know, to share a movie that I doubt anybody but Arnold and Arthur have seen. And that's because it wasn't even available online or as a DVD until a few years ago. So it is an archaeological find. Well, my, oh my, the 1937 High, Wide, and Handsome deserves our attention. It was created by three titans: Oscar Hammerstein, then 42, composer Jerome Kern, and director Rouben Mamoulian. It's another one of those rare occasions when the guy who wrote the script and the lyrics, Oscar, of course, is also credited with the story. So this was truly his brainchild. There was also big money available for this production. Oscar wanted to make an Americana musical about the early history of the oil industry circa 1860 in Pennsylvania and how the first oil pipeline came to be despite the conflict between the farmers and the railroad tycoons. They wanted to freeze the farmers out. Oscar was under contract to Paramount at the time, and this movie, based on fact, but not too many facts, was produced by Arthur Hornblow with instructions from the front office to spend a lot of money so as to compete with MGM. By the way, please note the cat in the background. That is one of three, as I think I mentioned before. So I'm going to tell you right off the bat that this movie did not make a lot of money, but to use one of my favorite words, High, Wide, and Handsome, starring Irene Dunne and Randolph Scott, it's an important film for several reasons. For one thing, Oscar's screenplay is really a saga, a complex story, so the definition goes, of heroic achievement. There's a heck of a lot of plot here, and that is unusual and ambitious for a movie musical of its day. In fact, in the context of all the storytelling that we find in Oscar's body of work, you have to at least mention it on the same page as 1927's Showboat, which was, of course, based on a novel. As I mentioned, this story was an original. By the way, Irene Dunne was beloved by Kern and Hammerstein. Not coincidentally, she had starred in the movie version of Showboat just the year before she made this movie. Oscar and composer Jerome Kern would collaborate on only one more musical before Kern's death, the 1939 Broadway show Very Warm for May. So what we get here is late Kern. The score comprises only 6 songs, but 2 of them rank with his finest: the ballads Can I Forget You and the sublime Folks Who Live on the Hill, which is also vintage Hammerstein in what it expresses. Oscar always regretted that it never won the popularity it deserved. But back to High, Wide, and Handsome as a saga. As you can imagine, sagas are expensive to produce. And this movie had the good fortune to entrust its huge budget to the Armenian-born director Rouben Mamoulian, who had come to Hollywood in the 1920s by way of London, Broadway, the Theatre Guild, even the Moscow Art Theater. Mamoulian made sure every dollar was spent cinematically to support Oscar's vision. We talked about the director when we shared Applause and Love Me Tonight, which was made just 5 years before High, Wide, and Handsome. Mamoulian understood that form follows function. Rodgers and Hart's Love Me Tonight It's a delightful confection. It may be my favorite movie musical of all time. High, Wide, and Handsome is a mostly serious and realistically told adventure. By the way, it was Rouben Mamoulian who directed the play Porgy and the 1935 musical, or opera, if you insist, Porgy and Bess. This film marked his first work with Oscar, but when the librettist and Richard Rodgers tackled Broadway's Oklahoma and Carousel several years later, Mamoulian was their man. As you watch the sprawling High, Wide, and Handsome, think about the director's contribution to this film. It is very large indeed. And I just can't praise Hammerstein enough. Get hold of Mark Horowitz's book of collected letters to and from Oscar between 1917 and his death in 1960. You'll find a charming letter to Mamoulian within its 1,500 pages. And not to worry, despite the size, this book will not break your bank. Mark is Senior Music Specialist at the Library of Congress. He's also a friend of mine who told me that by the time he finished this project, he felt he wanted to emulate Oscar so that he could become a better person. How about that? I mention it because, as usual, in this film, Oscar is a moralist, if you will. The hero, Raymond Scott's Peter, must choose between his love for Irene Dunn's Sally or, instead, leading the Pennsylvania farmers against the tycoons. And for much of the film, he chooses what we might call power to the people. The way Oscar mixes the love story with his anti-capitalist perspective was totally ahead of its time in Hollywood. Also, note that, as usual with Oscar, the three major female characters played by Dunn, Dorothy Lamour, and Elizabeth Patterson are all, in their own way, strong women for a film made in 1937. That was also true of Magnolia in Showboat, and Laurie and Julie in Oklahoma and Carousel, to say nothing of Hammerstein's later work. No doubt that, as usual, you will find some things to take exception to, but this is a film in which Oscar's idealistic values are displayed without apology. So I'm going to say that this is very much Oscar Hammerstein and Rouben Mamoulian's film. And I am grateful for that. For the Musical Theater Project, I'm Bill Rudman.